yeah, you got to induce this self calm, this respect for the land, to open up your own senses. Because if you're all over the place, you're going to miss obvious signs of animals. So if you can really calm yourself down
Yeah.
and and breathe deeply, and then be able to go off and walk slowly to track animals, and open yourself to all the signs that are offered to you.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. We have another great guest for you today. His name is Dave Holder. He was actually another Englishman who, I guess like myself, but far before me, went for a walk across the big pond and decided to hang his hat over in Alberta in Canada. He is a wilderness living skills instructor and a wilderness guide. He's also a consultant and producer on many survival style outdoors TV shows. Perhaps the most famous one is Alone, one of my faves. So, I'm super excited to share this one with you. It was great to catch up with Dave. He's got so many great nuggets of knowledge and incredible stories of the things he's done and the people he's met. But before we jump in, a quick favor. If you have a moment, give this podcast a follow. If you enjoy the content, then a 5-star review would be fan-bloody-tastic. Here's Dave. Okay, good to go. Ready for take 2?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Robin. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. Your name came up, I have to say, when I was talking with a few different guests on the show Alone. We were chatting and there's this mention of this guy, Dave. It required a little bit more digging at that moment. When the name popped up a few times, I had to do a bit of investigating. But I guess I should probably let you do some talking for a second and introduce yourself and explain who you are and what you do.
Yeah, and that could be a long answer. So stop me at any point, because
Okay,
I'll
okay.
try and relate it to Alone, I suppose, and where I am and why I am mentioned with the Alone show.
Okay,
But
sounds good.
yeah, as a young man, I spent a lot of time in England. I hail from England, and I ran around the countryside there. I loved everything to do with the outdoors, and I was influenced heavily by my grandfather,
Okay.
who loved to teach me fishing skills. He loved to ensure that I knew all the names of the trees and the plants and the birds, and that was my early introduction to the outdoors. And then along the way, I I suddenly picked up a copy of the National Geographic magazine, and it had a wonderful article on Stonehenge.
Oh, okay.
And so suddenly, I became interested in the Stone Age world and prehistory. That was followed quite quickly a week later after I found this magazine, when my parents took myself and my sister on a visit to Stonehenge,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and that embedded further this knowledge that I wanted to gain of prehistory. So I started studying prehistory a little bit more, and um, I started to make my own bows and arrows and spears,
Nice.
much to the chagrin of my elder brother, who I would use as my target when I was out, and we had a few family fights over that. But I joined the army, and I joined the Royal Engineers. Became a military engineer, combat engineer, and that was a long career where I traveled the world. But through the military, I was introduced to many outdoor skills like hiking, climbing, skiing. And I really took to these skills because once again, now I was being allowed to play in the outdoors again, which was wonderful. So I became an instructor in many of these skills.
Yeah.
And was lucky to work in a unit where I was teaching these skills to other soldiers. And I did that for a short time in the military, but that led to a whole sequence of world travel. And when I was with the military anyway, it was in Africa, I was in Belize, I was meeting the local people in those countries.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to be able to observe the skills that these people were using in remote places. When I was in Africa, we did a short jungle survival course, and we had the Kikuyu tribe teaching us trapping skills and some other really cool outdoor skills.
That sounds amazing.
It was wonderful, and then I was thinking to myself, hey, I like this world of survival, which perhaps back then wasn't so much of a big thing within the civilian world, but in the military world, of course, it was a necessity for soldiers, depending where they're serving around the world.
Yeah.
I ended up coming to Canada, where I was teaching rock climbing in Canada, in Jasper, where I met my wife, Brenda. I fell in love with her quite quickly. I gave up a promising career in the military. I retired, and I immigrated to Canada. And when I arrived in Canada, actually, I was so lucky because I was kind of going from college to college. I wanted to improve some of the skills that I had at various outdoor colleges here in Canada. And I was waiting for a job, in essence, I suppose. And then a friend of mine phoned me up from one of the local British Forces bases that we've got here in Alberta in Canada. And said, hey, look, they're after a mountain leader. Do you want the job? And I said, yeah, sure. So I went along to work for the summer for this mountain training center, British Army Mountain Training Center in the Canadian Rockies. And went there for one summer. And then 8 years later, I was still there working for them, which was marvelous because this gave me a chance then to get a real foot into the country. I went off and took Canadian guide courses, North American guide courses, rescue courses, first aid courses.
Yes.
And at the same time, I was learning skills from my wife's culture. My wife is Cree.
Okay.
She's indigenous. And so we used to go on visits to her family, and I met all these highly skilled outdoor people who had more of a traditional outlook to the outdoors. And I was introduced to a world of hunting, of trapping, and I embraced those skills, and I learned as many of those skills as I could. And I suppose the big meeting for me was running into a guy called Morse Kahansky, who's an amazing, or sadly passed away a few years ago, but he was an amazing bushman, bushcraft instructor, well renowned around the world, in England, North America, Europe.
Yeah.
And I'd trained with him for about 20 odd years.
Wow.
Learning as much as I could from him. After 12 years with him, I eventually gained a certificate from him as a wilderness living skills instructor, which he ceremoniously awarded to me in his back garden, with Brenda with the camera there to record the momentous event. And she applauded. There was nobody else to applaud, but that was a wonderful moment for me.
I bet. That must have been amazing. Amazing kind of having, so many different sources of knowledge and inspiration. Yeah, I have so many questions. But okay. But I guess then you've had these amazing experiences. At what point, if we're doing this kind of quick summation of kind of you in a nutshell, I guess, first of all, I want to roll my sleeves up and dig much deeper into all of these things because bells are dinging in my head as you're saying these things. But at what point did you get connected with, I guess it's the show alone, but also media and TV production and film production? You've kind of had you kind of built a connection with that whole world at some point.
yeah, it was. That's a long story too. Anyway, here we go.
Okay, let's do it.
So Brenda, my wife, is quite famous, and she started to pick up all television interviews, television shows. She was asked to appear on various shows. She actually had her own TV show on Aboriginal People TV Network for a short while as well.
Amazing.
And when she was on those shows, I was called in to do the safety because of my background within outdoor skills, safety, first aid, and everything. And now my newfound knowledge in Canada of civilian style bushcraft, primitive skills style survival skills. So I came into that. I also did a number of things while I was across here. I became a cave guide. I did dog sledding for many years as well.
I read that.
And yeah, and it was through that I became a consultant on the Walt Disney film Sled Dogs or Snow Dogs with Cuba Gooding Jr. So I worked on that for a while. But so I was my resume was building with all of these TV network appearances or consulting or advising on the shows. And somebody then sent me an invitation to this random show that was starting up to come and appear as a cast member, and I was a little skeptical about it at first, and I volunteered to go onto this show, and I went through the same rigmarole that all the cast members do now.
Okay.
And it ended up going to a boot camp in New York, and I got turned down for the first Alone show.
Huh.
So I came out. My ego was a little dented, but not too much. I got on with life, and on the second season, I got the call from the production team, and they asked me if I'd like to come on the Alone show, and they said, yeah, we want you as one of our survival consultants. So that's how I got onto the Alone show.
So it sounds like you're saying you didn't get on the first. Wait, did they give a reason why you didn't get on the first? Did you speak to anyone about that at some point, about why you didn't make it on the first season?
I did, but I don't want to sound like an egotistical idiot here, so I won't tell you why.
I could say it.
You'll probably say it if you want.
I think I read it.
Ryan,
they decided that you were too good for the show, like it wouldn't be a fair competition, so they decided to not put you in. At least I think that's...
I think Ryan, one of the producers, has said that. Yeah,
allegedly.
Allegedly.
Okay, so then it must have been. I mean, it must have been quite disappointing to not get in it, because I'm sure at that point you've got a lot of experience. I wonder if when you were doing the training and going through that boot camp, you were kind of having a look around thinking, oh, my odds have got to be okay right now. I think I've got pretty good skills. I should hopefully get out there and get on this show. Was that? Yeah. Were you kind of surprised when you were like, oh, I didn't get in?
Yeah, there was certainly a few of them on that first show. I thought, I'll easily beat these guys. There was a couple there though. Won't talk about their names, but yeah, they were really good, and I'm friends with them to this very day as well. And they appear to be really good, and when they were on the show, actually, they were very good as well. So yeah.
And I guess it's interesting. Okay, lots of questions. Let me just get my brain in order. I would say it's interesting how the show has evolved, because I think that the first seasons were quite different than as they are now, and I think that probably stems from the big reputation and following that has happened over the more than a decade of this show being out there. Did you learn a lot, I guess, is the question, like from the second episode or second season onwards? Were you kind of learning about how to, I mean, I don't know, how involved were you in terms of like working with the producers and structuring how to make an effective or such an amazing game? Is it a game? It doesn't really feel like a game. It feels like very much like real life, and that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, it's certainly an extension of everything I'm interested in to do with survival, with the outdoors.
Yeah.
And for the whole production team, who is one big family, may I say, because we're all very, very close. And it has been a big learning process, and we all work together at every moment of the show. And we're very proud of that, in that we will get everybody on the team together to talk about the next step that we're going to take as a show evolves, and in the field, and before and after.
What was your first impression? I guess if at that point, you'd had some production experience already. How did it, I guess what were the kind of biggest challenges early on that you were figuring out in those early seasons? I mean, you're getting to some pretty remote areas. The first thing that pops to mind is keeping a check on people, weight loss, health, all those kinds of things. Were those systems in place earlier on, or is that something that kind of evolved and developed, I would imagine?
We've developed the skills around that, but certainly the medical side of that show has always been in place to a degree. But as we've learned more and moved ahead, we are more diligent on everything that we run in the field.
Yeah. Do you have any distinct memories or stories of things that happened whilst you were out? I mean, you've been in many different places as well. If there's any places that particularly stayed with you as an amazing location to be shooting that show?
Yeah. I mean, I remember, as I talk to you now, everything is I'm being governed by a non-disclosure agreement as well. So
of course, anything that you feel like not comfortable being able to talk about, then of course, I don't want to put you in a tricky spot, and that's fine. We can also the joy of editing.
Yeah, and if for people listening might think, oh, well, why isn't he saying more? But for me, I think the beauty of the show, just on the survival side, is the fact that we get dropped off, or we get into location on the advance party, like well ahead of everybody who gets there. And I get to spend time with some of the local people.
Yes.
And Patagonia, when we were there in season 3, I spent time with the gauchos in the field. We went out on horses. And I had to have an interpreter who couldn't ride a horse very well, which made it difficult for him. But we'd stop, we look at plants, we look at mushrooms, we'd talk about gaucho survival techniques out there. Mongolia, I went to the University of Ulaanbaatar and spent a few days there with one of the biologists, learning about the plants in the area and the animals in the area as well, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
So
there's another thing that popped in my mind. We can tiptoe around some of these things. And then I'd actually love to go back and hear more in depth of your story of how you got to this point.
Yeah.
But how does the system kind of work? I'm curious about this. When people are dropped in an area, it seems like there is an abundance of animals, but only I guess I'm assuming there's kind of tag systems and quotas and animals that are permitted to be hunted and other animals that are protected. So is that still is in effect when people are out in the environment? So there's a kind of an understanding or a briefing beforehand where they certainly shouldn't be running around chasing some animals that, I mean, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's one of my roles, one of my jobs is to work closely with the local fish and wildlife guys, which is standard on so many of the different other survival shows I've done as well. We work with the fish and wildlife. We learn what their regulations are. We learn how much they'll let us do, because sometimes they will allow our cast members to hunt more animals than perhaps some of the locals can, or they'll allow us to hunt as many animals as the locals can, which normally, if you're an alien, that is a person outside of the province or the country, you wouldn't normally be allowed to do. They open up to us a little bit more.
It looks amazing. I have to say, I'm a huge fan of the show. So the wilderness and the environments and the animal encounters, and it just looks so incredible. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to go back to the beginning.
Yeah,
and
totally.
just learn more about you and the ingredients that made you who you are today. So where in England was it that you grew up?
My father was in the Air Force, so we travel around a lot.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I was born in a town called Bognor Regis in Sussex. My grandmother had a hotel there, and I was actually born in that hotel. But um, then with my father, we moved all over England to the various Air Force bases. He was a pilot,
Yes.
and he was an instructor, flying instructor. So we were always based in remote airfields in the countryside, because that's the beauty of the Royal Air Force. Their airfields are just in these beautiful locations in the country. So I always lived in the countryside, which was wonderful.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Maybe I'm misremembering this. But is Bognor Regis the place where there's a bunch of fossils in the? Is that correct?
Oh, is it?
Maybe
is it, or is it down further
No,
west on
maybe it's
further west,
Lyme
Dorset,
Regis I'm thinking of.
Lyme Regis? Yeah,
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's Dorset going down west. Yeah,
That's my mistake.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, Bognor Regis has got long sandy beaches with pebbles all over them.
No
so,
fossils.
yeah, not as far as I saw. There had chunks of flint there, which I played with, but that was it.
Okay. And
Yeah.
were you tempted at that point then to play with making kind of arrowheads? And they're saying if there's lots of flint there, did you ever get into that kind of tapping away, making arrowheads and things?
No, it was a few years later.
It was
at
the Stonehenge.
Many years later, in fact,
yeah,
Stonehenge.
The Stonehenge
that
era.
did it for me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so how old were you when you went to see Stonehenge?
I was about must have been 10 years old.
10 years old. Okay. And so then from that moment, you had a lot of countryside available to you to be making your own bows and arrows and things like that. Were you ever tempted to hunt in the UK? Because it's slightly different rules there. I remember it's a lot of small game kind of things. Or I mean, I don't even think bow hunting is allowed there, is it? I think I looked that up.
No, technically it's not allowed. Although allegedly I might have run around with a bow shooting at bunnies at one time.
Well, I'm sure it was allowed then.
and trying to trap them, but I wasn't really that successful. And of course, well, as you know, from England, hunting is really hard to get into.
Yes.
And it was coming across to Canada where I found that people, with North America in general, people have a lot more freedom to use the land, to hunt on the land, to fish wherever they want.
Yes.
So that's when I really embraced that side of my outdoor life a whole lot more.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? It's something that I've kind of noticed, that there is a big cultural difference. And I guess it comes from, I mean, it's something that, I try not to, but it's easy to take it for granted in the US, and I'm sure in Canada as well, that you have access to all this amazing land and these incredible animals. But it's even like ingrained culturally in England, isn't it? It's just a bit different. And I wonder if that comes from, I guess it comes from kind of the lords and ladies, and then the peasants, was it that the peasants, I think they weren't allowed to hunt big game, were they? That was kind of the king's deer or that kind of
king's
stuff.
Deer. Well, that's why Robin Hood got into trouble, wasn't it? With Robin Hood and his band of merry men hunting the king's deer on parkland there. But yeah, it is caste related, I think, more in England than certainly here. But now I do watch some hunting shows from England, and regular folk, so to speak, now are actually getting out there and hunting, because it's there's more access to the land.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's not still being controlled the way that it used to be. Yeah. I did do a little bit over there, getting connections I can never get my the West Country. Yeah, I made friends with some people at a local gun shop, and they took pity on me and took me out chasing rabbits and dove and that kind of thing. So I did manage to squeeze in a little bit of small game, but certainly nothing like deer or the kind of usual things that we'll be chasing, or moose. I think you said that you might be going after soon, huh?
We got moose on our land here. We got white-tailed deer. Uh, we have snowshoe hare, grouse. In fact, I was out the other day hunting grouse. I got a big ruffed grouse,
Nice.
and that's it here. Further afield, some other areas that I can gain access to. We have elk as well,
Oh,
and
okay,
and
amazing.
bear, and we have bear, but we don't hunt bear.
Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, it's a cultural thing
Yeah, I thought it
for
might
my
be.
wife.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, for her particular band from the Cree Nation,
Hmm.
they don't hunt wolves or bears.
Interesting.
Mm.
No predators at all, or do they ever?
Well, it's those two in particular because they're regarded as a protector species. They protect the clan that the band she's from.
That's interesting.
But yeah,
Okay, forgive me, we're jumping around a bit now.
hey, no worries at all.
But I'm curious about your experiences in the military as well. You said that you spent time in Africa. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So the British Army, I don't know whether they still have, but they used to have a base in Kenya,
Wow.
and it was a place where the infantry would go to train, to get some hot weather training, and a little bit of jungle experience in the African jungles there, around the base of Mount Kenya. That was, and we as the engineers, we supported them, like building places for them to base themselves from. But during my time there, we were also seconded away to help the local population as well. So we would do some work on roads. We would work on the hydroelectric power there for the local farmers and the local tribes people out there as well. So it was a nice project. So wherever we went as engineers, we had this kind of double role. It seemed to me that we'd help the military side, and
Yes.
then we'd also help the locals out as well. And I was in Belize, and in Belize City, we helped um, repair an orphanage there for the local nuns.
That must be amazing. Did you learn much? Like, I'm sure if you were managing to spend time with people who are locally there and they have the local skill sets, I mean, what are the things that kind of pop in your mind as interesting techniques or approaches to being out in the bush?
But yeah, I mean there was tons and tons. I mean with
I'm
the
sure. Yeah,
Mayans,
I'm sure.
yeah, with the Mayans in Belize, I remember a certain fishing technique. There's little fish that live in the rivers there called sardinas. I think they're related to piranhas, but these little sardinas, 2 inches long,
Okay.
um, don't have teeth. They have little bony gums. And as soon as you get in the water, they're attracted to the salts, the minerals on your legs or other parts of your body, and they start nibbling on your body there.
Oh, really?
So they're incredible little things. But the locals, what they will do, they will smear maize flour on their hands, put their hands into the water, and all these little fish will come in to gobble up the maize flour. And you see the local women then scooping these fish out and putting them in a bowl right next to them. And they would take those little fish away and then deep fry them and eat them like French fries.
Oh, so interesting. So they wouldn't do any processing of the fish. They just eat them whole. No
Just eat
gutting.
them whole, no gutting or anything. Now in England, of course, I don't know whether you remember it, but in the pubs you'd be able to buy white bait,
Yes. Yeah.
which is very similar, just deep fried little tiny fish in batter.
Funny. I never even occurred to me that they had not been gutted in any way.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah.
You said before you were building hydroelectric power.
That was for the farms. So some of the farms that we were working
Oh,
with.
okay, that was for farms.
But I believe it also benefited the local community as well.
Okay, okay. And I'm imagining, so when I think of hydroelectric power, I imagine like an enormous concrete kind of dam kind of setup. But what did that look like? Was that, can you describe
Yeah, it
what kind of scale that was?
it was tiny. It sounds grand, but it was tiny. A tiny little dam on a smaller creek,
Yeah.
a much smaller scale. So all Royal Engineers have to have a secondary trade. So as well as your combat style trades, which would be the combat engineering, we would get a building trade as well. mine wasn't very grand. I was a painter and decorator. But we'd have bricklayers, plumbers, electricians, refrigeration mechanics, vehicle mechanics. And so within a troop of Royal Engineers, once we all got together,
Yes.
we were able to accomplish much larger tasks. And yeah, so I would have to learn how to bricklay. I would learn how to help the plumber out or the electrician. And so yeah, I'm not an expert on hydroelectricity. I just stood there, pointed my finger. I was a corporal at the time, and the right guy would come up and make me look great.
What's the system working?
The system worked. Yeah, it's really good.
That's interesting. I've never really thought about that before, but yeah, like the benefit when you have that much of a broad skill set in a well-oiled machine, I guess is kind of a good metaphor. But yeah, like all those skill sets arriving in a location and just being very, very effective and being able to develop an area.
Yeah.
Curious. It also says that you were a mountain, let me think what the term was. A mountain leader. I think that was your
Yeah, so
title.
in the British forces, you become a mountain expedition leader,
Okay,
or joint service mountain expedition leader, and it's very similar to the mountain leader training board, which qualifies civilian mountain leaders in Great Britain, and the two work together. I don't know whether they still do, but certainly back in the day, we would take courses at some of these civilian colleges teaching mountain leadership. So, yeah, I got a bit of a taste of both worlds, of civilian and military. But yeah, we were qualified to lead expeditions. Nothing really fancy. We weren't using much technical equipment, but basically walking in remote areas around the world. So we could lead expeditions in jungles and deserts and mountains around the world where extreme technical skills were not required.
yes.
I'm trying to think of the exact definition there. Yeah.
No, it sounds pretty technical definition. Do you have any memories or stories from those moments of times that you were in the mountains or in the desert or in the jungle, things that spring to your mind of interesting moments or maybe close calls or yeah, anything like that pops into your head?
Yeah, I think I must have had a boring existence because, as a survival instructor, I always get people asking me, well, have you ever been in a survival situation? I thought, well, maybe to a moderate degree, but really good planning has kept me out of trouble.
Yes.
But yes, there have been periods that have been very, very tough, and we've had to push to get through certain periods. Such as I was in Iceland, and we got rained on day after day after day, and we endured just being wet for it felt like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we had river crossings each day, and it's nothing really fancy. And but at the end of this long period, we were in this valley just in the middle of nowhere, and we looked across and we saw these 3 ponds. Now we were actually at a campsite. You wouldn't have known that, but it was a designated campsite. There's nothing there. There's no outhouses. And the fresh water was the volcanic water that was coming out the ground.
Okay.
And there were these three kind of ponds there. And it was like Goldilocks and the Three Bears story, where the top pool was incredibly hot. The middle pool was a little more comfortable, and the bottom pool was just right. So after enduring these days of endless cold, wet weather, we set up our tents that were soaking wet. We all got stripped off down to our underwear and went across to these pools and sat in these pools. And in the bottom pools, somebody had left this little yellow duck, this bright yellow duck from a previous group. And it's this little yellow duck in this landscape of gray, green, brown was just fantastic. And I took so many pictures of this little yellow duck bobbing around, and it always stars on my slideshows, which are hard to give now because my projector doesn't work and I have to transfer my slides into modern media. So, yeah.
Oh, well, that must have been a fun thing to leave behind. Strangely, I was hiking in a remote area in California and found a little rubber duck as well. Someone left a tiny rubber duck in a strange place, which I thought was a very strange, of all the things to leave somewhere. I guess it's like an iconic shaped thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about going over to Canada. What inspired you to head over there, first of all? Or was that originally part of a job that you went over there?
Yeah, it was to go over to Jasper. I was based in Germany at the time. I was a staff sergeant with a amphibious engineering squadron, and my buddy phoned me up from Canada and said, "Yeah, we're short of military climbing instructors, so if you'd like to come over, if you're available this summer, it would be great." So I had 4 or 5 weeks of leave coming up, so I said, "Yeah, I'll come across." So I came across to Canada, and Taff Reese, a really good friend of mine, great Himalayan climber. He was the guy that inspired me to get into climbing within the military in the first place. But he decided, or he had this girl that he'd met that he thought that I should meet. And I think it was a big setup right from day one. But anyway, I went across, taught the climbing, and then in the evenings, of course, we went down to the town of Jasper, and he introduced me to Brenda, my now wife. And yeah, we set up a date after a couple of dinners together, and we went out on a hike. And we went up this mountain. I thought I'd impress her with some of my plant knowledge. And
okay.
So I started pointing out some of the plants, and she was so kind to me. She really was. And I was talking about some of the medicine, some of the nutritional value that I knew. Well, she took each plant a stage further. She knew the Latin names. She knew what they were called in Cree. She knew the traditional ways of using these in her culture. At the time, she was studying to be a microbiologist as well. So very smart lady. And I thought, she really inspires me. And so after that, that was why I went back to Germany, thought about it, and decided to sign off from the military and come over to Canada.
Amazing.
And haven't looked back since. It's just been wonderful.
If I remember correctly, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think that you jumped into quite a bit of mountaineering stuff whilst you were over there. Is that right? Also, I've got here Alberta Cave Rescue Team. There's a whole other thing on top of the mountains and then inside the mountains, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it all evolved. But yeah, I came across here and was offered a job with the Adventurous Training Centre here, the British Army Adventurous Training Centre. It's shut down a few years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, I was hired. I ran a military exercise where we took guys. We took them mountain biking, whitewater rafting, canoeing, hiking, backpacking, teaching a little bit of survival to them. So while I was doing all of this, of course, using my military instructor qualifications, I transferred them over to Canadian qualifications. And in the process, then I was meeting more and more people. And after 8 years working with the Army, Brenda and I actually, I left that job and we started up our own outdoor company. So as many guides do here in Canada, you end up working a lot for other people.
Yes.
And I was working with a caving company and just taking out regular caving trips in the town of Canmore. And we ended up where we did cave rescue courses. We became members of the cave rescue team, which actually led to a contract with us going to Barbados and teaching cave rescue in Barbados, would you believe?
Wow.
For a few weeks. But yeah, with all of those skills, it kind of built my resume. And
Tell me about Barbados. Well, I want to hear about all of these things. Okay, so first of all, cave rescue. Did you have many situations where you needed to rescue people out of the caves? Did you get many like live situations?
No, it was really sad. I was really upset. We had a few where we got called out, but by the time I got there, everything had been sorted out. I mean, leading clients around a cave.
Yes.
We had some sticky points maybe where we had to help our clients through. In Barbados, we taught the guides there. There's some caves in Barbados called Harrison's Caves.
Okay.
And you can go on a cave tour, but you sit in a golf cart or a trailer being pulled by this electric vehicle.
Okay.
And the guide sits up front and interprets everything that you're seeing, with the stalactites, stalagmites, flow stones, which is so beautiful. I mean, Harrison's Caves is amazing. But the managers of that particular company wanted to ensure that if there was a cave in and nobody could get out, that their guides, who normally drove these vehicles, could actually lead their clients out of the cave through the wild cave systems that were attached to this beautiful scenic system that they had in place for tourists.
Wow.
So we went down there and taught them kind of rough caving with ropes, and we had the local fire service in who helped us. We had the local paramedics, and we all combined our skills, and we had the military as well, and we all combined our skills to train those guides. But also, it was an excellent exercise for all of the local military and rescue services to learn how to actually rescue people from caves.
I'm curious, what was the kind of basic principles of getting out? So if you have a cave in you're saying basically the normal route that they would go, that gets blocked off. They've got to figure out the other way out because you said that there were multiple ways to get out, but in kind of more remote areas that they weren't familiar with. But what does that look like?
Well, the actual cave that they took people around was groomed. It had a concrete road that you actually drive around.
Wow, okay.
And you have lights that come on at the significant moment when a guide is talking about a stalactite or stalagmite. So the beautiful, beautiful cave.
Yeah.
But the routes that attach to it actually go through wild caves. So you're crawling on your belly. You're going through muddy pools. You've got pseudo scorpions there.
What's that? What's a pseudo scorpion?
It's a creature that looks like a scorpion. That's not a scorpion.
Okay.
There's spiders. There's cave bats. So everything that people hate. It's Halloween. It's Halloween on steroids, and you've got to get these people through. So we have to train them how to drag, push, pull a casualty through those caves and get themselves through those caves and navigate and become familiar with those cave routes just in case.
I always wonder in those situations as well, light source has got to be a bit of a potential issue, or I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be there, but what's the kind of situation if you're running out of light? Like, what do you do? That seems like a worst nightmare to me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's everybody's nightmare. But all good cave guides will have at least 3 lighting systems with them.
Okay, always have a backup.
To be honest, I carried 5. I mean, it's marvelous with these new LED lights. You've got so many lights tucked away in your pockets and headlamps, etc. But each of their golf carts that they would drive around in would have a complete safety pack that we helped design, so that guide could jump from driving the vehicle into full-blown cave guide status to get people out.
So you mentioned before, and I don't know, forgive me if I pronounce his name wrong, Mors Kochanski. I think Mors
Kochanski.
Sorry, that's it. Mors Kochanski. Yeah. My mistake. I knew that there was a different pronunciation, but I took a run up and got it wrong. I'd love to hear about your experience meeting Mors and just learning from a legend for so long. That must have been incredible. That was after this point of caving, or was it happening at the same time?
it was all happening at the same time because through my time off, I was going out climbing, mountain biking, skiing, and doing
Yeah.
all of that. But
Yeah.
I was learning as much as I could about the flora and fauna here as well. And I joined a whole bunch of guiding associations where I had to learn all about the geology, the human history of the area here to become an expert and to be a good guide. And I always wanted to push my survival knowledge a whole lot more. And somebody suggested that I went to see Mors Kahansky. I'd seen his book. It's called Bushcraft. When it first came out, it was called Northern Bushcraft. But his book Bushcraft, I mean, it's still on sale. It's in so many stores here. And I ended up taking a winter course with him, first of all. And that was a great introduction to a different mindset. And Mors Kahansky at one time trained the Canadian Air Force in survival. And his knowledge was amazing. He learned from a guy called Tom Roycraft. And at that time, Tom Roycraft was still alive, although I never had the pleasure of meeting him. But I did that one course with Mors, and then the following year I came back for a summer course with him, and then I came back for another summer course. And we have a gathering up here every year. It's called Rat Root Gathering. And rat root is the name of a plant. Its actual name is calamus, and it's an aquatic plant that has some major healing properties to it.
Okay.
And we have this gathering where everybody in the bushcraft survival world up here meets up at the end of August, and Mors would be there, and I would spend a lot of time with Mors, of course, and I would invariably end up going back to his place with my wife Brenda, and he'd spend time passing on knowledge and looking at some of my early manuscripts of articles that I wrote for survival publications or some of the courses that I was teaching. We became closer and closer over the years, and I learned more and more, and inherited many books from him. His whole house was, you won't believe how many books this guy had. He had outhouses. He had to build, or sheds, not outhouses, sheds. Sheds in the garden just to house all the books that he had. And
wow.
Invariably, if you went along to visit him, he would give you a box full of books to leave with, or boxes full of research that he'd been involved in, and he had some printouts of that research that he would pass on to you.
What kind of research was he doing?
Invariably, he'd be looking at what's the best shelter to sleep in, the burning rate of woods, different woods that would grow in the northern boreal forest.
Yes.
Or what's the best wood that will allow you to make the fastest friction fire. What's the best clothing to wear, how one should wear it. So, yeah, it's his research in that kind of modern survival era was endless, absolutely endless. Yeah, even to I think the day he passed away, he's probably researching something.
I'm curious, what sticks in your mind as one of the more effective woods? That if you're in a situation where you're out there and you want to get warm, and I should probably give a bit more context. If you want to get warm quickly, it's a situation where you weren't thinking that you were going to be spending the night outside. What's the wood or the tree that you're looking for?
Here it's black spruce.
Okay. And
black spruce is just impregnated with so much sap.
Yes.
It goes up like gasoline. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still got a lot to learn, and I'm excited to learn it. It's one of those kind of things, I guess, as a dual-edged, overwhelmed by how much I don't know, but also excited that there's so much out there. But I've been using that. I can't remember what pitch it was. You know what? I should be able to say. Now I'm embarrassed. I'm showing my lack of knowledge. But while I was over in Colorado just now, there was a lot of pitch on trees that I was just breaking off and using, and it's just such a fantastic fire starter. Like
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it had to be from one of the conifers, so it'll be from the pine, from the spruces, from maybe a fir as well.
it was about
But yeah,
10,000 feet, I think I was usually at for most of the time while I was up there. So,
yeah, yeah. Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
so you said that Moors completely changed your outlook. You mentioned that he kind of gave you like a different perspective on things. Can you kind of explain how that approach was, or what it was that changed the way that you think about these things?
Well, I suppose that I've got to think of some good examples now, but I can't, obviously. But um, within the military, you get indoctrinated to certain styles of training, of perhaps old wives' tales around certain subjects, such as survival. What things should you be doing first in a survival situation? What's the best way to deal with a survival situation? And I think that with him, he blew a few of these myths away for me. And he, every time he blew a myth away, or he a told you about a particular skill, he would be able to back it up with science.
Okay.
So science that was gained from other researchers who were researching various aspects of survival, like hypothermia, etc., or science that he'd been involved in himself and what he figured out along the way.
I mean, you gave the example of hypothermia. Sorry, I don't mean to needle down on you.
Mm.
Can you recall if he had any approaches on hypothermia, and if that was different from conventional thinking?
Yeah, because going back initially, and what a lot of this research comes from Dr. Geisbrecht. Um, he's known as Dr. Popsicle here in Canada. He gets into a
That's a
lot
good
of
name.
yeah. I think he's got the record for being hypothermic the most times or something like that.
Okay.
But he's got a lot of research out there, and you can buy some great books from him. And he advises search and rescue at the moment. But Morse Kahansky would use a lot of his teachings, and certainly now we've learned with somebody who's hypothermic that you have to treat them as gently as possible. You have to try and keep them warm, and you have to keep them flat. You don't jostle them around. Whereas in the military, we'd be trying to keep them warm, but then we'd be evacuating them over a mountain range, tipping them up or down, sideways, or whatever. Or
Interesting.
the old school used to be to lay them flat and lift their feet up. And that was
Yeah.
what I was taught way back in my mountain training. But you don't do that. You just definitely don't do that. You keep them flat, level, and treat them very, very gently. There's more to it than that. A whole ton more to it than that. But
Yes.
yeah,
I have a very vague recollection of that too, the whole feet up in the air kind of thing. So what is it that makes them so fragile at that moment? Do you know? It's just you have to, moving them around is as bad. It's a bad idea.
yeah. Well, you have the warm blood around the core of the body, and then
Yes.
you have the cooler blood in the arms and the legs, which is quite acidic.
Oh,
And when the body rewarms itself, you should be warming up the core of the body, and that will
yes.
naturally slowly warm up this acidic blood within the arms and the legs. But if you lift up the legs or start jostling the person around too much, you're mixing up the cold acidic blood with the warm blood. That could be too much for the human form to handle, and they'll shut down completely. In a nutshell.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, actually, I vaguely remember someone saying something similar to me about warming up the exterior parts pushes that acid in and can also affect the heart as well. I thought at some point
Mm.
it's like not good to get that straight into the heart, but that could be wrong. You know more about this than I do. Okay, so I'm hoping at some point, if Brenda is available, I know that she's very busy, but I would love to at some point get her on to talk about some of her heritage and about Mohican trails as well, because
Yeah.
obviously that's a long 20 plus year story. But I'd love to hear a little bit about Mohican trails and your experiences with Brenda. And I don't know, did she start the company, or forgive me, I don't quite know that part of the
Yeah,
story.
it was. She started. No, I started my own company because nomadic activities,
Okay.
and way back, and then there was some sponsorship available from indigenous resources
Okay.
that were made available to Brenda. So for Brenda to take advantage of the sponsorship packages that were available, uh, we decided to form an Aboriginal based company where she's the boss, which is she likes that,
Yeah.
and and so we looked at forming a company, and uh, Brenda has a fondness for wolves. They are one of her spirit animals. And so we decided to call the wolf Mexican, which in Cree is Mexican. And Mexican is Cree for wolf.
Okay, that's where the name comes from.
So whenever you see our logo, normally it'll be a wolf's paw or the head of a wolf, depending which logo you're looking at the particular time.
And I mean, you're involved with Mohican Trails as well, and you teach survival skills within that.
Yeah.
But what is Brenda also? She's also guiding people and teaching them about all the plants. Is that correct?
Yeah, she is. I mean, yeah, Brenda became a qualified guide as well, a hiking guide. And she's a master guide with the Interpretive Guiding Association. And both of us actually have trained guides for that association. And in fact, I designed a few courses for them as well. But Brenda has also got the attachment to her medical past as well. She's a clinical herbalist.
Wow.
She became a Reiki master. She's a EFT, emotional freedom techniques practitioner, and she's a clinical hypnotherapist as well.
Wow.
So we've got the whole of this kind of spiritual, medicinal side to Brenda going on, attached to her background as a knowledge keeper uh, for plant medicine. So a knowledge keeper is a term given to a senior person in the indigenous world, in her world as a Cree elder, for her plant knowledge, which she got from her grandmother. So there was a lot that came from, she learned from university.
Okay.
And then there was also a lot that she learned from her grandmother. And then she also embarked on a course with a guy called Robert Dale Rogers, who hails from Edmonton and has written many herbal books, but she became a clinical herbalist through him. So there's that side of that going on. And then, of course, we leap into the true traditional world of brain tanning, hides, and she can teach trapping techniques, hunting techniques. She became a hunter educator with me. She's let that one lapse, though. She's too busy doing other things. But yeah, she's incredible at beading and fabric work as well, traditional fabric work. So a lot of that does come out more and more. Though she's on demand for her work within the herbal world.
And I guess over the years, she's been passing her knowledge over to you as well, which is
she has, and she's been ensuring that I keep myself up to date. So when I'm away on the Alone show, quite often she gives me a course to study while I'm away. So she'll book me up on some online course that I have to religiously follow while I'm away, not sitting around doing nothing on the Alone show. So it's she keeps me busy. Yeah, she's great. She's wonderful. Yeah.
How long do you go away for if you're going for a stint? Because you said before you arrive quite a bit before the actual show begins filming. Obviously, however much you're allowed to say with NDAs and all that kind of stuff. But is it a pretty big block of time that you're away?
Yeah, on average, we can say it's about 4 months that I'm away.
Wow, that's a long stretch.
Sometimes it's been a little bit shorter. Sometimes it's been a little bit longer, but generally 4 months. Yeah. And when we did season 3 and 4, which was 2016, I think,
Okay.
we went to Patagonia for close to 4 months. Came back. I was back at home for like a month and a half, and then we disappeared for another 4 months. So
Oh,
on a
yes.
so they
Southern
filmed
Hemisphere.
two seasons in the same year. Southern Hemisphere, Patagonia, back here, and then we went to the West Coast for season 4.
So you had perpetual winter for a year.
It felt
Almost.
like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My family was a different family then for the whole of that year. Yeah.
So there's a couple of areas that I wanted to just ask you a little bit about, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think.
Let's see. You can always say no. So you mentioned before, earlier on in our conversation, I guess the thing I'm noticing, and I guess this must be the same for a lot of people that go through experiences in their life and meet new people with new skills and new attitudes and approaches. You had these sort of defining moments meeting different people and learning from them. So obviously Moors was a huge influence in survival and approaches to being outdoors and not being in trouble. But you also mentioned that you spent time when you, I guess, first met Brenda, spending time with the Cree people and learning their culture and their approaches. And you said that that was a big influence on your kind of mindset and approach to certain aspects of what you did before. Do you mind telling me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's not just the Cree. As I spent time with Blackfoot, Sutina, Stony, and the Cree,
Okay.
and we ran a course about 12 years ago now, I think, and where we were training indigenous people, male, female people, to be guides within kind of the modern Western world side theme of being a guide, as a hiking guide, interpretive guide, but also bringing them to a degree where they could guide clients from Europe, from North America,
Okay.
take them out with the relevant credentials, and lead people on the trails, and then also being asking them to expand more on their cultural background, to introduce more of their cultural background to those clients who come across. A lot of people come to Canada and they want to meet the Red Indian. They want to hang out with indigenous people and learn about the various tribes and the culture of the people here. Uh, Things that I was introduced to was a deep respect for the land and a deep respect for nature, which I've always had, but it
Yes.
was a different spiritual value and held by indigenous people. So, for instance, when we go out on a hunt here, uh, we smudge. That is, we'll burn sage, we'll burn sweetgrass, and smudging means cleansing your hands, your body with smoke that comes from these plants to purify yourself and connect to the land when you go out and hunt or trap. So
Interesting.
that spiritual side was very interesting, and Brenda will talk about the plants as those plants that we go out to harvest. When we go out to harvest plants, we smudge before we go out. We ask permission from the standing people. The standing people are the plants
Okay.
that live
Yeah.
in the forest,
Yeah.
and we ask permission to harvest them, that they may be used to benefit other human beings or even animals. Brenda uses some of her medicine on pets and farm animals as well. So yeah.
It's so interesting. And I've got to say, through the many conversations I've had in this podcast, it's been amazing. Obviously, not nearly as deep an experience as you've had, but definitely the kind of opening of my mind to many different perspectives and many different ways of perceiving nature and being connected with nature. It's such an interesting, it's such an interesting process. And I personally, I absolutely love it. I mean, I probably wouldn't do what I'm doing if I didn't. But yeah, I find that so interesting when a door opens on a completely different way of seeing a world that you thought you already could see, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Japanese talk about Shinrin-yoku, which is forest bathing, which is becoming a big aspect now of the outdoor world. I have a very good friend of mine, Ronna Schneeberg. She leads forest bathing tours. So taking people out into the forest, taking people from inner cities, taking them to the forest, where it's a whole different feeling. But it's been proven that there are chemicals in the air that benefit people, their anxiety, ADHD, their diabetes even. And so forest time, wilderness time is a healing time for a lot of these people who come from the inner cities.
Yeah.
But Shinrin-yoku, I believe they even have a flower essence now of Shinrin-yoku. You can buy it at Heathrow Airport, so you can spray it around your house or something to gain the benefit. Whether or not you do, I don't know. I think it's better to go into the forest and experience it.
I think it might be, but still, I guess it might be better than nothing. But I definitely experienced that. And I guess it's all, I mean, maybe you can relate to this as well, because you live in a pretty outdoorsy place, I'm assuming now. But then there's kind of grades of things, aren't there? So I live in Northern California, which is pretty, I'm not in a town. I'm surrounded by redwoods. There's deer and bear walking past my window regularly, which is incredible. And that's certainly not anything like being in a city, but there are still further scales of that, I think, aren't there? Where even being here, moving and going somewhere like the mountains of Colorado, for instance, where I just was, you definitely feel that kind of level of, I don't know what it is, like unwinding, or something happens on a chemical level. And you must experience that as well if you're going out and doing these alone shows. I mean, I'm assuming that you're relatively close to where people are, or is that not how it works? I don't know how much you can share.
Yeah, well, it's been revealed before by some of the senior producers. Yeah, we do stay close. We're not close.
Yeah,
but we are close enough to respond.
Yeah.
And those people are truly out there by themselves, and so we are experiencing a similar wilderness, although we're generally in a lodge, and we are getting fed 10 times a day. But to that point, I was on another podcast recently about myself and one of the executive producers. We were talking about how we meditate when we're on the show, because we've got to have that downtime. We live together as a family. We live so closely, and we're with our team, and we get on famously, I think, with each other, because we respect each other so much. And quite often, some of the respect is that we'll go to our rooms and do our own thing, man. And just hang out. I'll do yoga. I'll have my own set of weights. I meditate in my room. I do qigong exercises, and then I'll go out on a walk. I'd like to go by myself and sit in the forest, stand in the forest, walk in the forest, and be out there. And quite often I go out into the forest, and I like to put myself into the place of the cast member. Although I've probably just finished breakfast and my stomach's full, but however, I'll go out and I'll look around the forest, and I'll see what I can find, and I'll just enjoy being in the forest there, and that wilderness location. It's just tremendous. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. It would be too irresistible to me to not be out there as much as humanly possible, experiencing it, because there's just some magic, isn't there?
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
curious.
incredible.
You were saying about meditation. How long have you been practicing meditation for?
Serious meditation for about like serious for a year, where
Okay.
where I realized I was probably playing with it before, um, and it was more just of a quiet moment, but now it's become serious for me,
Okay.
and yeah, so
I'm
I try and meditate every day now.
okay. I'm curious if you don't mind answering like what serious means to you in terms of meditation. So it's the consistency is the seriousness. Is that what you mean?
It's the consistency, and certainly I've learned more about it, which will probably take a lifetime for a lot of people. And but it's learning what you're doing with the meditation. You're trying to clear your mind, in essence.
Yeah.
You're just trying to, and with the clearing of the mind, um, it reduces anxiety, it calms the body, and it leads to you being a calmer person, being able to make calmer decisions.
Yeah.
Which is part of our job is response on the show. But the whole of my life I've worked in jobs that have demanded instant response.
Yes.
For emergencies, military, obviously, and on the show we're ready to respond at any moment. We have two teams ready to go, and so being able to calm yourself is part of it, because you look at paramedics who do 4 days on, 4 days off. We don't get the 4 days off. We're on constantly. So it can start to play on you a little bit. You're always ready to go somewhere, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the anxiety can build. So being able to meditate and just take yourself out of that anxious situation, I think is very, very important.
That's such a good point. I haven't thought about that before in terms of being part of the support team on the show. That it's that kind of hurry up and wait situation, right? If you don't ever have a break
Yeah,
from that could really play on your mind. So
yeah,
I would completely agree with you about meditation. My personal experience, I think I'm been going for maybe, I guess, seriously, if we're using that term,
yeah.
like consistently, maybe about 8 or 9 years now. And
Nice,
it came
nice.
about just as it became such a useful tool in terms of settling my brain down. For whatever reason, I very easily
Yeah,
distracted, or I think the industry that I was working in at the time was very, very busy, lots of stress
mm,
and constant deadlines and all that kind of stuff in the city. And it just became a useful tool as a way of escaping that initially. But now that I've got such a stronger connection with nature, it's proved to be a really useful tool in hunting situations
yeah,
where that moment, I mean, I'm a relatively new hunter myself. I've been chasing animals maybe with a bow and arrow for about 5 years now.
mm,
And I've been very, very lucky given my wife's connection with South Africa, the fact I can go over there and chase animals over there,
mm,
uh, and obviously here in North America as well. But the difference, having the ability to understand, like be present and understand, okay,
yeah,
my
yeah,
chemicals are going crazy right now. My heart rate's pretty elevated. This is a high stress situation. I need to just take some deep breaths for a second, calm down, and
yeah.
make some good choices right now. It's invaluable, completely invaluable. I
Mm.
wonder, have you experienced that as well? Because I know you also hunt and get out where you are there.
Yeah, it's you've got to be calm. You can't be. Well, we get excited. Yeah, of course you get excited,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
then yeah, you got to induce this self calm, this respect for the land, to open up your own senses. Because if you're all over the place, you're going to miss obvious signs of animals. So if you can really calm yourself down
yeah,
and breathe deeply, and then be able to go off, walk slowly to track animals, and open yourself to all the signs that are offered to you. I mean, I've worked with some indigenous people, and Brenda's quite good at this, where you see spirit tracking. So there's no obvious sign of animal there, but
yeah,
it's as though the person is tracking an animal through the woods, and lo and behold, they bring you out where that animal is. It's incredible. I've seen that now a number of times. Brenda has done it when we've been out bow hunting. Um,
Yes.
and rifle hunting. And then I've seen other indigenous people be able to do that. So there's no obvious signs at all, and they're not even looking at the ground.
Yes.
We get the mid and the high tracks, where animals are rubbing, they leave hair on trees and things like that. But no, this is different. They're just, it's almost as though these people are floating through the woods, and they bring you out where the animal is, and you think, whoa.
It's so
Yeah,
incredible.
and it really is. Spirit tracking, yeah.
It's funny. I've heard a little of this beforehand. Actually, I was having a good conversation. I don't think we were recording it, unfortunately. But Joel Vanderloon, I think you probably know Joel.
Joel, yeah.
Great guy. He was a guest on.
Amazing man.
Yeah. He was a guest on my podcast. One of the first guys actually to jump on, and we were having a chat. We've stayed in touch, and he was telling me about that. I think it was him that was telling me about that very thing about. I think he called it something slightly different, which is like intuitive tracking, where it's like feeling and like connecting, being at that level of connection with nature and listening to where you're being pulled, as a force drawing you to an animal. It's remarkable, and I think it's the thing. There's so much we don't know about, right? There's science and modern technology and all these things, but really, who are we to know what is possible? I'm sure that there's so much out there that we don't know, and that intrigues me so much. You can hear I'm getting excited now. Yeah, but yeah.
Well, it's the spirit world, and I don't claim to be religious, but I claim to be spiritual, and that's hard. That's hard to actually categorize that, because there's been quite a bit of Rupert Sheldrake talks about science and spirituality in one of his books, and he talks about what is religion, what is spirituality, but it doesn't matter what we believe, but the power of prayer. You hear about the power of prayer, and it's been proven that prayer helps people. Helps. How? But is this a spiritual energy in the world? So there is an energy, there's a spirit in the world that we connect to.
Yeah.
But I don't have answers, but certainly I read a lot of books.
No, I mean, I don't have answers either, but it's just the amazing things that I hear stories about. And maybe this is something, I don't know if you've experienced something like this before, and I hope that this maybe continues for me personally. But as I've been learning and growing as a bow hunter, I've had a few of these experiences now where, I guess initially when you first trying to, I think it comes into like starting at something, wanting to be good, there being some kind of ego involved, and then there's excitement because you think, I might be able to achieve this thing that I want to achieve. I'm kind of rambling now, but the act of hunting an animal with a bow is pretty difficult, obviously.
Yeah.
But I really am starting to believe that there's an energetic thing going on, that when you are amped up and your systems are going, your heart rate's pumping really fast, you're putting out something that animals can sense. They can feel it. And it's been in these moments when I'm feeling very, very calm, and I guess, I don't know if at one with everything is the right term, but just being very, very calm and kind of trying to just project an energy of like, I'm not even a hunter. I'm just another creature out in the wilderness. I've had animals that would normally be incredibly flighty, even in South Africa. I don't know if you're familiar with the species over there, but I've had like duiker look at me and kind of walk in and be just 5 or 6 yards away from me, because of some kind of thing where I'm not putting out like hunter energy. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that relate to anything that you've experienced?
Yeah, it does. But when Brenda and I teach tracking, and we don't teach it as much as we used to, but if we did come across some deer, we would demonstrate how close you can get to them.
Yeah.
And just, we'd bend over and pretend to graze. We'd be plucking at the grass with our hands and just look at them out the side. we're telling our clients then just to relax,
Yeah,
calm
yeah.
down, just be at one with everything and around you. There's an exercise called seeing through owl eyes, and I'll let Brenda explain that one to you.
Okay.
But it's it's a way to calm yourself and to make yourself allow yourself to be more aware of what's going on in front of you. So you start to see, hear, feel, smell things to a higher degree. Because quite often, we walk into the forest and we stop and there's that tune in moment. So basically, this is perhaps an indigenous way of tuning in to the forest.
Yeah.
So, you move away from your shelter, you'll sit, you'll tune in. Seeing through our eyes, this exercise is a really good way of doing that. And then once you've tuned in, you've calmed yourself, you reduced your own anxiety. There might be some of the meditation breathing exercises going on there as well, which will help.
Yeah.
But then you can move off and you're not sending out these spiritual vibrations, these and upsetting the very nature of the forest or the landscape that you're walking through.
Yes. It's amazing. It sounds amazing. I don't have
But
go on.
but I see you starting that, and it's just the more you get out there, I think the more you experience that for sure. And yeah, it's amazing what you see.
Yeah, long may it continue.
Definitely.
Well, unless there's something which you feel like you wish I'd asked you more about, we can start wrapping up if that works for you today.
Well, I can give you a segue into maybe the next conversation with Brenda is that that Morse Kahansky actually studied with Brenda's grandmother, I believe.
Oh wow!
And this was through a conversation. Brenda came along to one of these grassroots gatherings with me, and they sat next to each other, and then suddenly they realized that they knew the same people, and then Morse had spent time with Brenda's family, learning some of the plant medicine way back. So over time, they became very, very close friends, and it was quite magical to see.
That's amazing.
I
think it's small world, I guess, is the expression.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, from me, I think that's it. Unless you got any more questions there, Robin. Yeah.
There was one other thing I wanted to ask you, but I wasn't sure whether you would be okay to ask it. With alone, what do you think are the most fundamental things that people usually slip up on, or don't know enough about before their time getting out there?
Plant medicine is one.
Yeah.
And having the ability to switch off the anxiety.
Yeah.
And hence, meditation has become a really big part of my life.
Interesting.
Because I talk to the cast members a lot before they go out, and I tell them to get spiritual.
Yeah.
And many of them are quite religious anyway when they come on. So, they'll have that religious, spiritual side that goes with it. But, I talk about being able to connect to the land and, not see it as you're fighting the land. You hear the language come out of some of the guys. It is the guys that will say this as well.
Masculine.
I'm fighting to stay alive. I'm fighting. I'll battle my way through this day, or I'll battle to get this or that. But then it'll switch over to some of the ladies who've been on the show, and they're at one with everything. Just there's a connection. Wonia was one of them.
Yes,
that has this deep connection, and she and I have spoken often about that. She was at Rabbit Stick, the big primitive skills gathering in Idaho. I was down there, and we kind of went aside and had another little chat about it. This connection that you need
Yeah.
to the land.
It's so interesting. I mean, I'm sure there are endless growing layers with that kind of thing, but it's almost in my experiences now of being out hiking around the wilderness wherever I am, I feel it's like when I'm on an animal trail, I feel like I'm at ease, like I'm in a place where the wisdom of animals and nature is where you're supposed to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then it's almost like when you get off trail and you're like suddenly you're bashing through fallen deadfall and there's twigs poking you in the eyes and all, that kind of environment. It's like no one's supposed to really be here right now, apart from maybe some small little creatures that have got their own little runway here. Does that make sense? You know, it's like that connectivity and that understanding of using nature as it knows best.
Yeah. And and Morse would say, nature is neutral. It's neither for you nor against you.
Yes.
And I now firmly believe that on survival courses, instructors, if they don't teach it themselves, they should bring in other people who are capable of instructing such skills as meditation, emotional freedom techniques, which is a tapping technique to reduce anxiety. And that's being used on soldiers who've had or suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and other people who've been in disasters around the world.
Wow, I don't know about that. Yeah.
EFT, look it up, emotional freedom techniques.
EFT.
And
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to look that up. I love it when a little thing like that suddenly you didn't know about appears. Always interested to try something new like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, sorry, I thought that we were finishing and then I had another question for you.
No worries.
Thank you again for your time today, Dave. That was amazing. It was amazing to hear your story and yeah, fantastic. I guess if there's a little moment now, I say if there is a moment now where if there's anywhere that you'd like people to go or check out or maybe check out Mohican Trail's website, or if there's any links or social places, there's usually a little moment at the end of one of these interviews that you can suggest people go and find out more.
Yeah, they can check out Mohican, so all the W's, mohican.ca.
Okay.
And we're setting up more plant medicine courses, and occasionally I'll put on a survival course, but at the moment I'm quite busy with this alone show thing going on, and I will be putting on some more survival courses within the next few months.
Okay, amazing.
And we teach wilderness first aid as well. So we've got a few guides, instructors that do that, and we also have a few guides, indigenous guides, who run plant medicine walks in the national parks, Banff National Park.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but am I right in understanding that some of that wilderness first aid is actually utilizing some of the wild world around you as well, using plants and other available resources as well, rather than just like the medikit in a conventional sense?
No, for us, we teach the conventional wilderness first aid using your medikits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might be chopping down trees to use as splints and for stretchers, but Brenda does actually put on a herbal medicine first aid course as well.
I'm getting my own wires crossed. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It gets complicated. But yeah, she'll run herbal medicine courses, which will help you identify plants in the wild that will work on any ailments that you might be experiencing at the time, such as pain, infections of wounds, etc.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. That was amazing. So excited that I managed to, get hold of you and have this conversation. So
great chatting to you, Robin. You've got to come up here sometime.
Oh, believe me, it's on the list. I will absolutely love to get up there. I mean, the more times I experience these big wild places, the more I'm absolutely hooked.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Well, thanks very much, Robin. I enjoyed it. It was wonderful.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
All right. Take care, mate.
Right, that's a wrap. Again, I want to give a big thanks to Dave. Wonderful. I'm very grateful that I managed to connect with him and have this conversation. You can find all the links to Dave and Mohican Trails down in the show notes. I can also put a little link to Alone as well. If people don't know exactly what we're talking about, then that might be a good thing so that people can get a context. I've also decided to shift some of my waffling that I do up front to the back end of these episodes. I figure that it's something for the diehard listeners rather than scaring off any potential newcomers who'll be listening to this thing and going, what is this Englishman gibbering about? But anyway, a couple of quick updates from my end. Mushroom season is upon us, well and truly. I mean, it's been happening for the last 2 or 3 weeks, but the last 6.5 days, 11 inches of rain have fallen. It's one of these big atmospheric river thingies happening. So yeah, the mushrooms are going absolutely bonkers. They're blowing up everywhere. I mean, I found 2 backpacks full of boletes, chanterelles, hedgehogs, shaggy manes, even kind of like a little fake truffle as well, within less than half a mile of my house. So the area is thick with mushrooms at the moment, which is incredibly exciting. It's also turkey season, but the bow is dusty at the moment because I'm really going down the mushroom rabbit hole at the moment. In fact, if you are curious and want to see some pictures, head over to my Insta. That's down in the show notes too. I've got a bunch of pictures of tables full of bounty of a mushroom variety. So happy days. I've never been so happy to see the rain, I've got to be honest. I also want to give a shout out to MCMC, which I guess is the Mendocino Coast Mushroom Club. They had their first ever fungi festival, I think a couple of weekends ago. And it was great. I learned a bunch of new tricks. And yeah, I guess I also met some fantastic people who had some really interesting talks. I think there's going to be quite a few new mushroomy guests in the pipeline coming up on the show. So I'm excited about that. Going to have some really good people on. Last but not least, I want to give a big thank you to everyone listening again. If you did enjoy this episode, then please do all the things that people who enjoy podcast episodes do. Give the thing a follow, a like, a share, maybe even send a message to someone who you think would enjoy this kind of content. It's all appreciated. But I think that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Until next time.